Hi everyone, today's video is going to be about comparing the Vivo X200 Pro and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Let's find out which of these two is performing better. Even though I find comparisons quite hard because we are talking about preference here as well, and you have to take that into account. And I have my preference, you have your preference, and it's perfectly fine. But it does make it hard to compare two of the best phones out there that have such a different approach. Either way, let's dive into the comparison of the Xiaomi 14 Ultra and the newly released Vivo X200 Pro. And I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do, don't forget to like and comment, it really helps out a channel size like mine. Either way, let's dive into this comparison. Comparing two different brands and their shots is always going to be a hard one, because I don't care what people say. Preference will come to play, and yes, this counts for me as well. I have my preference, but I won't try to force it on you. My decision doesn't make it that it has to be yours as well. And the difference between Vivo and Xiaomi has been more divisive since their collab with their respective camera brand, Leica and Zeiss. In general, you could say that the Vivo has a bit more of a natural approach in colors like whites for instance, but it does have a bit more issue with greens in comparison. Xiaomi is however the brand that really approaches a shot more from a camera photography approach, including its flaws. It's a brand that will not have the best dynamic range, it won't have the perfect color every single time, you might need to take that extra shot to get the result that you need from it. But in turn, it really stands out in capturing the feeling in the shot itself, which I will have a really good showcase for in the portrait shots later on in the video. Now naturally, if we look at for instance shots that I've taken in France while testing out the Vivo X200 and X200 Pro, video link in the description, you can see I didn't change the settings here in terms of sharpness, contrast and so on. And now I have sharpness on -30. But you will see when it comes to that default setting that the Xiaomi is the one that looks far better for me. It looks more subtle, it retains a lot of detail without it over sharpening, where the Vivo does do that. Now lucky enough, when it comes to the Vivo, you do have that option to either turn that up or down when it comes to that sharpness, brightness, contrast and saturation. But for the Xiaomi, that's only possible in the Pro mode, where with the Vivo you can do that even in your normal mode. One thing though, while we are looking at shots at a setting sun setting and having warmer tones, it does show where the Xiaomi lags. It's the white balance that's just too cold compared to what you get in reality, and it does affect the shot. But I do want to highlight the difference between the two and their approach, because when it comes to these settings, I definitely prefer what Vivo is doing over Xiaomi. Now we come to the subject of RAW files, and that's always a little bit harder to showcase properly because it is .dng files and it isn't supported by Premiere Pro. So I need to export it as JPEG to then show you what the result is like, but JPEG is a compressed image compared to what you get on a DNG file. So less information in the shot than you would normally get. The biggest thing we can see in terms of difference is for instance the light coming to the sensor and the way that they process the raw image. What you want is a flat image, because raw is of course your image that you want to edit. You want to have full control over the contrast, the saturation, the brightness and so on and so on and so on. And of course see a good dynamic range as a result as well. Members of my channel however will get a link to a Google Drive where they can download those files and check them out themselves, because then it's .dng. Either way, let's dive into the comparison of the raw files itself. And no, I might not have had EV on automatically on the Vivo and therefore created a really weird situation where people were confused on what was happening. Especially because I'm not a technical know-how photographer, I'm more of a visual photographer and I get tunnel vision and I didn't notice EV was on. Either way, let's dive into the raw comparison. Now a small section of this raw will be with EV Auto on the Vivo, because the weather was okay and it does allow me to showcase the difference between the two in color approach, where these days the weather is just bad and hard to showcase that kind of approach between the two, especially when it comes to the colors. Now when it comes to shooting raw on the Xiaomi and the Vivo, there is quite a difference. When it comes to the Vivo for instance, you still see some correction going on after taking the shot. It doesn't feel like a complete raw shot there, because simply put, for instance, noise is not there where it should be there, so there's some noise correction. And also things like light sources is done a lot better on the Vivo itself. And it also feels like it's being processed a little bit more compared to what you get on the Xiaomi. That definitely feels a little bit more like a raw shot. That being said, when you look at those light sources, I can adjust the brightness and get that glow in there with the Vivo, where with the Xiaomi, of course, I cannot show the details inside the light itself anymore. It's basically here, pick your poison between the two approaches. And while we are on the subject of RAW, we should also discuss log video recording, and the amount of data that the Vivo allows is really good, with it allowing up to 120 megabits per second. This results into shots of the Vivo having a total bitrate over 100,000. In comparison with the Xiaomi, while both are recording in 4K 60 frames per second, we get about 37,000 to 40,000. In turn though, you do see a difference in depth of field. The Xiaomi naturally has a 1-inch sensor size, which is a larger sensor size than what you get on the Vivo, which has a 1/1.28-inch sensor size. Therefore, a bit more natural depth in comparison to what you get on, of course, the Vivo. Now, I don't have many portrait shots as of yet to compare the two together, especially because I don't have the Vivo that long. This is the shot that I'm talking about. The Xiaomi has imperfections, far less edge detection, which is great on the Vivo. But in turn, it has that feeling and warmth that is really well captured on the Xiaomi, and the person in the shot preferred the Xiaomi shot, even with the flaws itself. While the Vivo is much better and more consistent, what it needs work on is allowing imperfections. While there is no skin smoothing on at all, there is still some, and I think it can lose out because of that. So my request is easily that: get some improvement when it comes to allowing some imperfections on the skin, because those imperfections can capture a story behind the shot itself. It's hard to explain what I mean with that, but those who understand will know what I'm talking about here. The Xiaomi, however, needs to work on far more better consistency. Skin tones can really be an issue, and of course, edge detection can be a hit and miss as well. Now when we talk about telephoto / periscope, it's a bit of a mix, because the Xiaomi 14 Ultra does have a telephoto with a 3.2 times zoom, which is close to the 3.7 times zoom that we get on the Vivo X200 Pro, but then on top the Xiaomi also has a periscope, which is a 5 times zoom. Both of those sensors are, however, a 1/2.51-inch sensor size, compared to the much larger 1/1.4-inch sensor size for the periscope on the Vivo X200 Pro, which also has a resolution of 200 megapixels to both next to it. Now when it comes to results, both are doing a really good job in terms of details and in terms of noise reduction as well. The quality is really good for both of them, however, just like the main sensor, it really depends on what your preference is here. The Xiaomi will not do as well when it comes to the dynamic range, and when it comes to just the overall shot itself with the exposures, it's just not as good as Vivo. But it really allows the shot to have a little bit more character because of that. It's not trying to be perfect, and again, here it comes down to what your preference is. And in these shots, as you can see, I've turned down the sharpness quite a lot on the Vivo X200 Pro. The setting is -30 for that sharpening. It's far more towards my liking itself. Okay, recording 4K 60 frames per second on both. I will say when it comes to colors, the Xiaomi, apart from the grass itself, is closer to reality. Just a slight bit more contrast than in real life. The grass is right now in between a little bit, I guess. That's definitely closer on the Xiaomi. Brightness up, of course, naturally on the Vivo. Let's go to ultra wide. Walking, sky, Again, it's a little bit in between both of them. The Xiaomi is really dark on the bottom part of the screen itself. If we do this, what happens? Yeah, there's quite a bit of sharpening also on the Vivo in comparison. 3.2 times versus 3.7 times. Let's get them in the same position. Xiaomi is a little bit closer. Both a little bit off. Let's do 5 times first, because that's the natural state for Xiaomi. 5 times. And then 10 times for Wolf. Let's pan around a little bit. Oh, I do like that quite a bit more on the Xiaomi. It's a bit more moody, a bit more starting to get low light, which it is. Front facing camera on both, 4K 60 frames per second. There's something odd between both of them. I would like a little bit of a mix. Don't know how to describe the Xiaomi. I would say the Vivo is just a little bit too bright, but something odd going on with the way the skin looks a little bit on the Xiaomi. Nothing terrible. Just looks a little bit odd on the phone itself. Could be on the computer that it looks completely fine. I don't know. But this is what we get with the front-facing camera. Now when moving to the ultra wide, the Xiaomi does retain more details every now and then around the edges. Look at the plans here, it's far more detailed on the Xiaomi in comparison to the Vivo. The Vivo in general sometimes can have some loss of details around the edges, where the Xiaomi manages that better. It also of course is wider than what you get on the Vivo. We get a 12mm equivalent on the Xiaomi, where we get a 15mm equivalent on the Vivo. And of course the Xiaomi does have the larger f-stop of a 1.8 versus a 2.0 and a 1/2.51 inch sensor size for the Xiaomi, where you get a 1/2.76 inch sensor size on the Vivo. That being said, just like the other two sensors, it can struggle with white balance, especially during warmer settings with a setting sun. And just like before, the Vivo does have better light control as well. So at the end, when it comes to a comparison like this, I made the message before when I compared the Vivo X100 Ultra versus of course the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, link in the description where you can check that out, that the Xiaomi is more like autumn and winter, where the Vivo is more like summer and spring. It creates that kind of vibe, and I feel like it really depends on what your kind of feeling / mood is that you want to capture into the shot itself. Now with that being said, there are some differences that we have to take into account. Let's begin with RAW. RAW for me always has been about the shot being as close as to what the sensor itself can do. And with the Vivo you do notice that it isn't really RAW, because it still has some processing on the background, be it noise reduction or be it somewhat still a EV that is working on the background even though EV Auto is off. And then of course when it comes to the ultra wide, there definitely the Xiaomi does perform better compared to the Vivo. Now when it comes to the styles of the shot and so on, yeah, that's something that you have to take into account for yourself. That's something you can judge for yourself. I can judge for you what you're supposed to like better. But when it comes to comparing these two phones, it's a really difficult one because of those different changes and the different approaches between the two. I love both of them, and both of them are really good, and they have their moments where I feel like I prefer the one over the other. But what I will say is that the Vivo is more consistent, and that's something that the Xiaomi still lacks. Hopefully with HyperOS 2.0, or maybe with of course the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, we're gonna get a more consistent performance. But right now, I will say when it comes to Vivo, I can rely on it more. Not to mention, the battery life definitely is a lot better on this Vivo X200 Pro, which is actually really excellent. Either way, what did you think about this comparison between the Vivo X200 Pro and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra? Which has your preference? Let me know in the comments below. It really helps out if you comment that as well for my channel. And of course, liking the video as well. And if you aren't subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe. But do let me know which has your preference. Now, before we end this video, I really want to thank my members. I really appreciate the support. It really does mean a lot for me, especially for my channel size. And if you want to become a member, you can click join somewhere below. And of course, because I'm posting this on the 31st of December, Happy New Year everyone. Hope 2025 will be a good year for everyone. Hopefully this channel grows a lot as well, where I can do this pretty much full time. Because right now I'm juggling jobs in between. It's a lot of work. Either way, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. And of course, if you aren't subscribed yet, like I said, don't forget to subscribe. And talk to you guys in the next.